So now we're going to move on to our next session, speaker number 2. In this second session, we're going to explore self-awareness and personal development. This relates to preparation strategies, emphasizing the importance of understanding yourself, your strengths, and your areas of growth as you embark on this path. We're going to discuss realistic expectations, helping you to align your goals with the demands and realities of the master's application process. And then finally, our speaker is going to help us to address managing the uncertainty and also exploring alternative pathways. I think that's very important, as well as offering guidance on how to remain adaptable, resilient, and open to different opportunities that may arise along your journey. I'm going to read her biography. Excuse me. Nhlapho is a passionate advocate for mental health and societal transformation, viewing society through a humanistic lens. Nhlapho celebrates the uniqueness of every individual and believes in the transformative power of healing. With empathy, creativity, and a deep love for community and psychology, Nhlapho inspires others to transform challenges into opportunities for growth and for strength. Nhlapho is an intern counseling psychologist as well. Thank you so much for joining us, and the floor is yours.
I don't know, am I audible? Can everyone hear me?
Yes, ma'am, I can hear you and I can see you.
Okay. Thank you, Nonhle, and thank you for this opportunity. I'd like to also thank your team for inviting us. It really is a wonderful opportunity. It aligns with who I am, always empowering others to show them that everything and anything is possible if you put your mind to it. So on my side, I think Nonhle for also introducing me. I'm also currently an intern psychologist at Charis Psychological Services, more of a clinical setting. So it can seem as though like how are now counseling psychologists in clinical settings, but at the end of the day, we do have a different lens, and there is a need for us as counseling psychologists to be in a clinical setting. So I also studied studied psychology. Mainly with my journey, I just focused on psychology, never studied anything else. But I think, the way even Nonhle gave me the topics to talk about, they're so in alignment with who I am, and they are able to translate my journey, because I'm going to be speaking about putting in the work before you get into this selection and how it can be helpful. I always say that what psychology has taught me is that we are the tool. As a psychologist, as I am a counseling psychologist, I am a tool. And to always know that on how to refine it is very important. The refining happens even way before selection, even way before application, way before you start your journey here. And I think that is something that also Selina mentioned, that it starts somewhere. And you are the tool. There's that importance of refining. And that's why I'm so grateful that I was given these topics, because I'm able to reflect that. And I am aware that time has gone, so I'll try to be more quicker, but still insightful. So with how I'm going to approach my presentation, it's more on tips, advice, guidance, and how to help you in refining yourself as a tool for this selection, for this application, and as a psychologist moving forward, as an aspiring psychologist moving forward, how can you refine yourself as the tool? So I'm quickly gonna share my screen right now. Okay. I just want to know that if it's clear on everyone and if everyone can see it.
Hi, Nhlapho. Yes, your screen is clear and we can see it. I just wanted to apologize. I am conscious of time, but I want us to do this well. So, if you can, please continue to the best of your ability, in the way that you had planned it, so that we can get value of this exercise, if you're comfortable with that.
Okay, that is not a problem. Okay, that is not a problem. Thank you, Nonhle. So in regards to my presentation, Selina has really fed us. I was also thinking, I'm like, certain things I didn't know, and I don't know how I got this far, but it was very insightful. And thank you for that. And she touched on something that is very important that I am gonna go into depth with, which was self-reflection, because it's part of self-awareness. So before I go into that, how I'm going to approach this presentation is more on tips and guidance. It's more of a discussion. I do not put a lot of information in the presentation because I want us to be able to reflect throughout this presentation. So get out your journals, your notes, your pens, and write this, that as we are speaking, as I am sharing, you're able to note that down and reflect on it. And then secondly, also, this is personal reflections. Let this not limit you into what you are capable of and what you can achieve. There's so many ways, and I'm only sharing from my experience because I understand how important it is, even in this field, to be able to relate. So this is based on my experience, the impact that I've received from other M1s and people that I've interacted with throughout this journey, and just to prep you, besides the application and the process, but something that has to do with you and how you can benefit from this journey. So that is how I am going to approach this presentation. So the first one, we're speaking about self-awareness and personal development strategies. So in this one, the first one, which is what Selina went into depth about, we cannot emphasize enough how important self-reflection is. That is the core of being a psychologist. If you cannot self-reflect, it takes away from the process of the work that we are doing. So I know that Selina spoke a bit on it, but I'm just gonna also highlight this, that the ability to understand, to recognize your own behaviors, your feelings, your thoughts, and how they impact you. I'm gonna emphasize that, how they also impact you and others. So with me right now, we're gonna go more in depth on how they impact you, because how they impact you is also how you reflect and influence and interact with others. So the ability to self-reflect helps you in self-awareness. And how do we do this? Because of now we are talking about strategies. With the how then do we do it? We've spoken about reflection. We've spoken about self-reflection. How then do we do it? And these are just tips and strategies that we can use. First is therapy. Oftentimes this questions comes a lot in your panels. When you're in your journey of selection, they will ask about therapy. And it is very important. If you are not in therapy, go for it, and don't wait for a time where things are collapsing. Remember that therapy breeds growth, and that is very important, to be able to see your blind spots. And I think oftentimes we tell ourselves that, you know what, just because it doesn't trigger me, I've healed, I'm okay. We tend to block out that experience, even if it means just for you to go and check where you are emotionally, where you are, psychologically, where you are. Go into therapy. It is very important for self-awareness. It is very important for personal development. Finding out, even right now, before you go into selection, because then how then do you reflect on yourself if you're not aware of the blind spots or things that you think you've dealt with, but you actually swept it under the carpet, which is two different things: dealing with something, facing it head on, and just putting it for I'll deal with it when I can, or I just don't want to deal with it or leave it alone. So those kind of things can actually show up in terms of your panel interviews or even individual interviews. So when you have not sat down with that and learned or gained the skill to be able to self-reflect, this can actually shoot you in the foot. So this is part of your self-awareness and personal development strategies. I always say, I think last year, what I also realized during my M1 was that 50% of what masters is about in psychology is training, is gaining the knowledge, gaining new skills. But the other 50% is self-development. You get to learn so much about yourself that if you are not aware, of where you are and what your weaknesses are, what your strengths are, this can be it can be challenging to navigate when you are in that space. So 50% is actually self-development because, like I said in the beginning, remember this, you are the tool. So when you're not aware of what your capabilities and what you can do, it defeats the purpose of why you were there. So very, very important. And I think another point under the ability to self-reflect, a strategy that can help you is ask yourselves the questions. We often think that it is, ask yourself questions in terms of what can I do and what I cannot do. It's difficult when we have to deal with our weaknesses. It becomes very hard when you realize that, oh, for such a long time, I was able to I thought I'm a good communicator, and you just find out that you're actually not. Those things can be very difficult to swallow, especially if you're going through therapy and you find certain weaknesses about you that you actually thought all along, I could do this. Such things can be a hard pill to swallow, but it is necessary for your development, your personal development. And in the previous segment where Selina was speaking, she spoke about defensiveness. That was a blind spot, not being able to recognize that as a psychologist, as an aspiring psychologist, as a student psychologist. If you're not able to recognize those blind spots and be honest with yourself, you are limiting yourself from self-awareness. You are limiting yourself from the ability to be able to self-reflect. You are limiting yourself from that growth. So allow yourself to actually sit, ask yourself those questions and be able to sit even with the most uncomfortable parts about yourself. Because if you cannot hold that space for yourself, then how can you hold it for the next person? How can you do it? Because even in our role plays, they will see that. They want to see, can you be able to hold a space for another person? But if you have not learned that with yourself, it becomes a limiting factor even in how you present yourself in other situations. So it is very important to be able to ask yourself those uncomfortable questions. And a quick tip that I could just also talk about, when you are aware of yourself, even in panel interviews, when they ask you questions based on yourself or your challenges or whatever that they picked up in your motivational letter or your autobiography, it's okay to actually still sit and ask yourself that question. Sit in the moment. But those things we don't learn because we tend to overlook them because we say the quicker I can answer a question, the quicker it shows that I understand. Or if I'm taking a moment to think about something, it can show like maybe I'm not understanding this thing or whatever. But the ability, that skill to be able to sit with yourself, reflect, even in your mind, so that once you speak, you're able to present that well. It's very important. And that is a skill, a strategy that you can take in when going into your selection. I also just want to say that you are only as good as you know yourself. If you do not know how good you are, or if you're not aware of who you are or what you stand for, or are able to self-reflect, you cannot know to what length or what degree you can excel as an individual. So self-awareness, the ability to self-reflect, will help you even in this journey. So the other strategy, while a very bittersweet one, that, especially because of our journey in psychology, is so long. You know, we all been there. It's such a long journey that volunteering sometimes is something that we, you know, we feel a bit off about it because our journey is so long and it needs finances. We need the funds. Sometimes you've been sitting with your honors for 2 or 3 years, and it's hard. You know, it's challenging financially, emotionally. But the reason why I'm bringing volunteering in self-awareness and personal development is that volunteering allows you to be out there. Don't overlook, don't overlook opportunities that don't give financial gain. Don't overlook them because they can be very empowering and very impactful in your journey of becoming a psychologist. Before I got into masters, my CV only had volunteering. And I used to feel so bad about it that, oh my goodness, I've never worked in a mental health setting or whatever. And I used to look down on myself about it until I learned the power of volunteering and how that assisted me in being out there, being able to interact, creating networks. Even till today, with people that I volunteered, they were able to be my referees in applying. Even, people that I got into different spaces, they were able to speak for me at a time that I need them. So it's not about just going through it and studying and studying and studying, but not actually allowing yourself to gain that experience. We often say, why psychology does not have practical experience. This is the experience that you need for self-awareness and personal development. This boosts your confidence because you're able to interact with people. You're able to be in a space where you acknowledge the impact that you have on other people and even, how they impact you, So it's a something that is very important for our self-awareness and personal development, being mindful of how you interact with other people. Very, very important. But overall, volunteering also helps you to develop, to learn the skills, how to talk to people, how to be in a space where it's not just you, but also how you impact others. So this can be a strategy on how to learn more about yourself. Also, what you can do and can't do in different spaces. This can actually help you to gauge on that so that even when you're in your panel interviews and they catch you off guard with something, you're already aware of that. You're already aware of what you can and cannot do. And this also shapes you in directing the kind of stream that you want to be in before selecting going into masters, because oftentimes we make a mistake where I don't know whether I'm a counseling or a counseling psychologist or a clinical psychologist or an ed psych. I don't know, but because of, for example, not that I'm looking down on clinical is well marketed. I mean, throughout all my years of psychology, all I knew was clinical psychology. I knew that it was well marketed, well spoken of, and I never knew there was another option of counseling psychology. But doing my research, being out there, volunteering, exposing myself to so many information, it helped me to realize. And also when I did my volunteering, I was able to understand the lens that I view people. And that is the difference. I see there was a lot of questions on the difference between clinical and counseling. I suggest that everyone does their own research, but just a quick information is that we view things differently. As much as we both are similar and kind of overlap here and there, the difference is the lens that we use as counseling or clinical psychologists. So when I was volunteering, I was able to learn that about myself. It is very important to know that about yourself. And how would you know if you don't find yourself in spaces that actually allow you or teach you or expose you in that sense? So that's why I put in volunteering here, that it is such a game changer. Don't ever overlook it just because it does not have a financial benefit. It will benefit you in the long run. So that's where I'm going to end with volunteering. Get yourself out there, do the hours, whatever it takes, just go out there, do it, as long as you are interacting with people. Oh, and a disclaimer here, when I mean volunteering, please, yes, going and working at a maybe volunteering at a pet shop or something like that. It's still volunteering, but it's not in alignment with interaction with human beings. So as much as it can be volunteering, try to be in settings such as maybe organizations that deal more about development, maybe mentorship, where you are in close perimeters with other people, not something that is outside of that is not actually directly to how you interact with other people. So that is a disclaimer when it comes to volunteering. And remember to pile up those referees. You need people that are going to speak up for you. Very, very, very important. And this is the space where you get them. We are not overlooking work experiences, but I'm saying for those that, because we know that with an honors, you do not get a job. You won't get a job as a psychologist unless you studied B-Psych equivalent, but not everyone gets the opportunity to. So create that space and show up for it. So another thing that helps with self-awareness and personal development is self-management. Sure, okay, I learned this one the hard way. Very, very, very important in masters as a psychologist, because psychology demands so much out of a person. So how to be self-aware and gain personal development. This is a strategy. Learn how to self-manage. And this is a skill that you can start practicing now, because psychology is such a demanding field in a way that, just to briefly talk about my experience as an intern, is that you do not just see patients or clients. There's paperwork in between. There's preparation before a session. There's reports that you have to write. There's process notes, progress notes that you have to write. There's presentations, there's training, there is so much that we only think being a psychologist is sitting in an office and saying, how are you feeling today? It takes more than that. And if you do not gain that skill, even in M1, it's going to be very, very, very difficult. So self-management focuses more on self-discipline, being able to maintain your time, your focus, staying, and I emphasize staying motivated, because of motivation does not last. It requires discipline for you to actually push, for you to actually get there. I mean, we're already experiencing that now during application, that if you really want to go in there, there are people who've applied 4 years, 5 years, and they're still going in. Imagine if that person only relied on motivation, they wouldn't have come there. It requires a sense of discipline. So that is also a core of a psychologist, an aspiring psychologist. These are skills that are very important. Being able to adapt. This is a question that comes in masters, in panel interviews, in personal interview. Are you able to adapt? So I'm speaking on these things so that before you get in, these are things that you're already thinking of. These are things that you already, you are processing. Are you able to adapt? I mean, for us, for example, it can be very challenging because we all have personal views. But if you do not have that self-awareness, you will not see how sometimes your personal views can limit you from growing, because you're saying, I believe this, and this is what I'm going to stand for, and that's it. But when it comes to psychology, remember, we're dealing with human beings, and there is a diverse information about people, and it can challenge your values, it can challenge your beliefs, it can challenge so many things. And the question they ask, are you able to adapt? So this is part of self-management. Are you able to be in a setting and be able to adapt to what is happening? Being mindful of what is happening, being flexible, because if you're not flexible and you're rigid, it becomes hard for you to be trained. It becomes hard for you to learn new skills and new ways. And I'm particularly talking about this right now because when you go into masters, it's training. So many things are going to be thrown at you that if you're not flexible, if you're not able to adapt, if you do not have that skill or that strategy, it becomes very difficult for you to actually learn. I mean, after that, when you're in your practice, I mean, you can stick to your own niche and what you believe and what you stand for. But now we are talking about training. Flexibility is very, very, very important. The ability for you to learn and consume new information. Stress management is also part of self-management. This is a stressful journey. You know, how you carry yourself, how you present yourself, how you cope with stress, how you know, how you deal with difficult. Like I said, a psychologist is not just someone who sits there and we just listen. We do so many things and it can become very stressful. Even these applications, they can become very stressful. So being able to learn that skill right now, you know, even if you do not get in this year, I'm giving you this, the kind of information that I'm giving today is not just for today, but it's also for, even if I don't get in, these are the things that I can work on. And even if I do get in, these are the things that I can still develop, you know? So this is the kind of information that I'm giving, that learn how to manage your stress. And that is part of self-management. I think the last one under self-management will be accountability. I mentioned it before, but what I want to stress here is being honest with yourself, yes, but also the responsibility, taking ownership of the actions that you do. As psychologists, be mindful of how you move, because remember, when you are in a setting, we have the upper hand. You know, we have the upper hand. How you influence others is very important. Be mindful of that. So when it comes to self-management, I say this is a base strategy. Learn how to do that for yourself. Not only will it help you now, but it will also help you as you progress through the journey of becoming a psychologist. And the last one that I'm going to talk about when it comes to self-awareness and personal development is self-acceptance. In the last, this one, I just want to echo the words of Carl Rogers, where he says that the curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change. It's hard. Like, it's very, very challenging to become a psychologist. I do not know how many times you cry, you break down, you have a meltdown, because, like I said in the beginning, you are the tool. So being honest with yourself, accepting yourself for who you are is very important. It can be a very difficult thing. And that's why in the beginning, I said that one of the strategies for you to self-develop, for that personal development, is go to therapy. Because when you can't deal with this, with who you are, it limits you from the next person. It limits you. It really holds you back. If you do not understand what kind of tool you are and how you can maneuver in this situation, it limits you. You know, you can't be using, you know, a screwdriver to cut something. That doesn't work, because you're not aware that actually I'm a screwdriver. I'm made to go into a screw. So when you don't understand those dynamics, it becomes very hard. And these things reflect in your interviews. These things reflect in your paper application. These things reflect in your panel interviews. And if you have not made peace with who you are, you limit yourself from growing. You limit yourself from reflecting. You limit yourself from learning. You limit yourself from developing. And that is a very key aspect of what we do as psychologists. And if you limit yourself from that, it becomes very, very, very difficult. And you can shoot yourself in the foot because they see that you are not ready. Because you have to step into that space and be able to accommodate someone into that space. But like I said in the beginning, if you cannot hold that space for yourself, it becomes difficult for you to do it for another person. And I'm talking about these strategies because, you know, I could have went to, your journaling, your all these ones that we can, we are always taught. I'm talking about these strategies because they are very personal, and these are things that people as human beings we go through, and we don't realize how that can also affect or reflect in our application, in our interviews, in us even before application, in how we prepare for application. Because if you're not in tune with yourself and you cannot show that personal development, they will deem you as not ready for this process. And that's why I unpacked it. I spoke about flexibility, adaptability. I spoke about self-management. All those things come with you being self-aware, you being able to personally develop. And those things are very important, but these are little things that we tend to overlook. And that's why today I am highlighting this, because I learned this throughout the process and it became difficult. It became difficult, but yet at the same time, because of I was so exposed to some of these things that I did mention, like volunteering and, being able to self-reflect, surrounding myself with people in those spaces, I was able to actually prep myself like that and be able to go into that space and reflect myself. You never stop learning these things, but when you do have the basics of them, they can really help you in the long run. So in conclusion to self-awareness and personal development strategies, these will help you in understanding also the stream. It's important to work on these things to understand also the stream that you would like to go into, because there are people who shared stories for years. They've been applying for clinical counseling. They didn't get in. And by the time they got into counseling and they realized that actually I am a counseling psychologist, but that required self-awareness, that required doing the job, that required the refining season where you find out more about yourself, where you sit down with the most uncomfortable things about yourself, where you face those challenges, those traumas, the pains, things that you find uncomfortable. When you do the work, and this is the work that no one talks about, because oftentimes we talk about the work of do research. Yes, do your research. Do your research, find out which university best fits you, do the background checks and whatever that you want to do. Yes, that is valid information, but we tend to overlook this one of self-awareness and personal development. It is very vital because that is the core of who we are as psychologists. So that is in conclusion for me when it comes to self-awareness and personal development, that don't shy away from doing the work, because that will also help you in the application, the selection, and ultimately you being an M1 student, you being in internship, you going out and having your own practice or whatever that you want to do once you're a qualified psychologist. It helps you, but the work starts now. The work starts in this very moment. It does not start later, because you might find out that you will be losing out on things that can actually help you to grow and develop. So that's where I'd like to end. And that's why for the first part, that take the time, take that time, take that opportunity. If this year you do not make it, remember what we shared in this webinar. Go back and do that for yourself. Go back and learn. Go back and invest in your career. This is your career, and this is where the self-discipline now comes in. You have to do the work. No one can do it for you. We can be here, mentor you, share our experiences, share our tips, but at the end of the day, this lies with you. And when you invest in yourself, when you work on yourself, when you put in the work, the difficult parts of who you are, the things that challenge you, when you show up with confidence. You are secured within yourself. When you show up in those interviews, you show up with confidence because you know who you are, you know what you stand for, you even know your triggers, your biases, that even when they pick up something on your autobiography, you're able to stand up for that and speak up for that. I mean, if I were to share my panel interview with UP, they picked up that I'm a very what can I say? I'm a perfectionist, but because I understood why I'm a perfectionist, where it comes from, why I want to have certain things in control. When they picked up on that, oh, Katla, it seems like you always want things, you always want to be in control of certain things. To me, it did not come as though they were coming, behind me. But because I am aware that I do sometimes present that way, and I was able to speak on it, and I was like, yes, that is something I'm working with in therapy. That is something that I know I struggle with. That is something that I know I was able to be able to reflect that I acknowledge it, I am working on it, and I have grown from it. There again, self-reflection, So these things are very, very, very important. Not always spoken about, but the core of what we're doing as psychologists. So I'm gonna just jump onto the next one. So when it comes to realistic expectations, when it comes to masters, yeah, we know that it is very difficult, one of the most competitive degree to get into. But maybe let me highlight a lot of things from our experiences and from experiences of other people, and things that you can still keep in mind while now you are preparing for application selection and all that. Realistic expectations is that let's first focus on the admission process. We know that getting admitted into university, just from application, there is tons of applications coming in, and it's too much, and it can become very overwhelming, and the realistic expectations is that no matter how much you prepare, no matter how much, strong grades you have, no matter how much you do your research, no matter how many webinars you attend, that is still not a guarantee that you will enter. And that is the realistic expectation of things. And I am talking about this because we need to come to a point where we make peace with that. We understand that as much as I put in, it does not reflect on the efforts that you put in, but it's just how it is, because I realized that with rejection, oftentimes when we are rejected in this journey, we beat ourselves down. We beat ourselves down, not knowing that you went against hundreds of people, and automatically you just beating yourself down. But allow yourself to be an opportunity to go back and learn, to go back and develop, and not an experience for you to beat yourself down or be discouraged, And that's why self-awareness is very important. Personal development is very important, because these rejections, they do happen. And if you cannot process that and learn from it, it also can be a very limiting factor for you to grow, or for you to come back and learn from that experience. So realistic expectations that the admission process is very difficult. No matter what we do, it is very difficult. That's the nature. We need to make peace with it. But once we make peace with it, then how can we maneuver through it, So that is one of it. The realistic expectations of this process is that it is hard. So I think many of us, we are well aware of how hard it is, but I wanted to highlight this, that don't let this be a discouraging element in this journey. Don't let this be a limiting factor in this journey, that the process is hard. You never know when it's your year. You never know. So don't let this be limiting, but also know that this is a realistic expectation, that the process is difficult, irrespective of what you do. And then another one that I wanted to talk about when it comes to realistic expectations was financial consideration. There is a whole lot of financial things that you need to consider when it comes to application and selection, being in M1 again. So we start with application fees. Of course, you're going to have to put away money for all these applications that you will be doing from different universities. Yes, there are some universities that are kind enough to still take your application without you having a fee. But the realistic expectation is that you will have to spend some money when it comes to application. Another one is traveling. If they call you for selection, sometimes they want you in person. Your interview is in Durban. Those are the kind of things that you still have to think about through selection. Once selection comes in, and you can even start, I always say prepare yourself as though they're gonna call you, because you never know. You don't want to be called and then you don't even have funds to travel to another province for your interview or things like that. So those are things those is what you have to expect in part of this journey that we are walking in, that there is financial aspects and not just academic side of things, but there is that finance element, registration fees, tuition fees. Those are things that you still have to put into consideration. When I was applying for my master's, I was already also applying for bursaries because I did not know whether they were going to call me back or not. I did not know which university was going to call me back. But with every university that I applied, I put their names on every bursary. And I'm talking about this because in application season, we tend to forget about the financial aspect of it. And it can be very, very, very exhausting, very tiring, very discouraging, But this is very important. It plays a very crucial role because of then how do you travel to interviews? How then do you prep for your registration? Because of if they do take you and this is your year, they need registration. And if you do not have that, you can fall short in terms of you being registered and actually beginning this journey. So do think about things like that, how you're going to move from one place to another. What if you stay in Pretoria and you get accepted in Cape Town? Those are kind of things that even in application, we don't just think about your autobiography and all that. They go together. Those are things that still need to be at the back of your mind that you still think of. For me, example, like I was saying, that I was already applying for bursaries and it was in, everything was just in. I used any university. Once you get a bursary, you're able to transfer that bursary to the university that you are registered at. So you might worry, but which university am I gonna put on my bursary application or scholarship and all that, So again, another thing that while talking about finances that I really wanted to put out there, when it comes to psychology, we really do have limited bursaries, So that's another competitive area of our field again, that even when it comes to bursaries, we still have to be, there's that sense of it's competitive in a way because you don't know whether they're going to choose you or not. Because when it comes to psychology, we really do not have funds. I mean, we even see when it comes to our government and how they respond to mental health overall, there's no funds in it. So being mindful of that, those are very important things that you need to consider as you go through this application. Don't disregard them. And also looking into age, some bursaries cut off, up until to a certain age. And those are things that you need to think of as well. So that's why I'm saying that becoming a psychologist is not a one-way street. There's so many things that you have to consider, and those are the realistic expectations of this journey. Whether you like it or not, you have to be present in that, because when I remember, it was very, very stressful if you don't have funding. Take from textbooks to traveling to accommodation to everything, it can become very stressful and detrimental to your journey in your M1 or even preparing for your application and selection season. So don't forget to apply for bursaries, guys. Wherever, like, just keep looking, keep looking, search. There's NRF, there's so many bursaries out there, but you still have to fight as a psychologist because of not a lot of them do fund psychologists. So you still also have to motivate why you think they should be, funding you. There are private companies that also fund psychologists, psychology students. So those are the things that you still need to keep at the back of your mind. So another realistic expectation when coming to this journey, things that we don't often talk about, but they're there. It's time and commitment. You will have to leave your job. That is a commitment. So while you are applying, while you are preparing, please keep these things in mind, that you might have to leave your job, leave your home, city, family. You have to leave certain things behind. And we want to talk about these things because when we don't speak about them, it's like you don't get the whole picture of what it is to become a psychologist, what it is to, get into masters, because these are part of the master's journey, that you will have to do that because it's a full-time coursework with so many things that are happening in between. So time and commitment is very, very important. Keep that in mind as you are applying. Even when you're applying in terms of universities, where you go, we often say apply to different universities. It gives you a better chance of getting into the program. But what we often, don't think about is that these aspects that I just mentioned, that you'll have to leave your home, you'll have to leave your family, and how that can affect you emotionally, mentally, and how you present yourself even in the whole program. Because in panel, they are gonna ask you this question. So start thinking about it right now. Start thinking about, if I leave home, also just tracking back to finances, they're also going to ask you, how are you willing to fund this program? Because masters is expensive, So have a plan in check with that. So coming back to traveling, moving, and they are going to ask you, as a mother, leaving your family, how is that going to sit with you? You need to be able to reflect on that. So that's how you can also prep for yourself. These are realistic expectations, because of you'll have to leave everything behind and go study for 2 years or however years, because programs are different. You have to leave that behind, and those are things that you need to consider even at this beginning of this journey, that you don't put it at the end and then you are shocked and you have to drop out and you have to be like, you got an opportunity, but because of you didn't take the time to think about it, you realize, oh, but this is too much for me. I think for me, with doing the self-awareness and personal development, what I picked up is that I did not want to be away from home. I knew that I did not want to be in a university that's extremely far, far, far away from home. I still needed my physical family support. So I only applied at universities that were close by. But that was a personal choice, because I knew what I could handle. I knew what would benefit me. And whereas with other people, they're okay with moving away. But those are questions that you have to sit with yourself and think about before going into this program, before even applying. This kind of questions also determines the kind of universities that you're gonna apply at, So these are things that you can sit down and think about right now as we go into application season. Thinking about also, are you ready for masters? That is a very valid question, because of the time and commitment that takes to be a master's student. It is so much, because we juggle coursework, we juggle practicals, we juggle research, we juggle case presentations, we juggle so many things, that if you are not in a right emotional, right financial state, these things can be very challenging to you. I've heard, scenarios where people have actually dropped out of masters because of they cannot take in that pressure. I'm talking about this because this is a realistic expectations. Right now you can be driven by the desire that, I want to be a psychologist. It's nice. The title that comes with it's nice. It does boost your ego, and it feels good to be called a psychologist. But that's why I mentioned that in the beginning, it's important to always be honest with yourself. We are not saying that takes away from the ability of you to be a psychologist or anything like that, but be honest with yourself. Are you really ready to get into masters, because of its time and commitment? It can be so taxing. It can be so much that you might find yourself in, but not even capable. And that will limit you from a full experience of learning. Be honest with yourself. I'm not discouraging you not to go for it. And I'm also not diagnosing you or anything like that. But these are questions that you need to sit in with, because it is hard. It is challenging. It challenges everything that even your personal relationships are put on a test. Even your friendships are put on it. That's how challenging the master's program is. So these are things that you can start considering, being honest with yourself. I know right now it's time for application. The hype is up, so many webinars coming up, so many mentorship coming up, but take a step back. Ask yourself those questions, whether you are ready, because of this requires so much, and so think about things like that, the time and commitment and how it looks like. So these are realistic expectations that I really, really wanted to share, that I did not know before coming in. And I feel like had I had someone who spoke to me about these things, or someone who shared these things with me, I would have better prepared. But however, sometimes, the way that things work out, you go in and you will be the one that shares with other people. You will be the one that stands in the gap and share with other people what it looks like, besides the academic, besides the research, but more on the emotional, mental, financial, physical side of becoming a psychologist, getting into your master's. I wish someone would have told me these things, but I don't know. It becomes very hush when it comes to masters. I don't know why people become so, they hold on to that information. But these are really helpful information that people can sit down, think about, prep yourself. Don't just prep yourself in terms of like paperwork, prep yourself even individually as yourself. Like prep this tool that we are talking about, prep it and see whether you can go for it, so that when you do get into selection interviews, you walk in there with confidence, you walk in there so self-assured. But remember, not boastful, not thinking you know it all, but the self-awareness that we are talking about is being able to be aware of your strength and your weaknesses, being able to talk about them, being able to reflect on them, being able to understand your impact and how you impact others and how you also impact yourself. So these are the realistic expectations. And because of today, we're talking about counseling psychology. As much as I'm very passionate about counseling psychology, and I'm really happy that this webinar was basically, given that light on counseling psychology. I was really excited about it. And I think another realistic expectations that just came up now, and I forgot to include it in the previous slide, was that counseling psych, when it comes to internship, you will hear it. If you haven't heard it, you will hear it, that when it comes to internship, it really doesn't pay as well as clinical. But however, the reason why I'm talking about this, I'm speaking from a counseling psych perspective. As much as that can be very discouraging as to, I don't want to go the counseling way because of the other expectations. Those are expectations. Those are realistic expectations. Whether you like it or not, counseling psych internships do not pay as well as your clinical. So I wanted to talk about this, that don't let this be a limiting or a discouraging factor. Because when you're able to walk into something that resonates with who you are, with something that speaks to the core of who you are and what you stand for, okay. I see a hand, yes, Nonhle.
My apologies. I'm so sorry to disturb you. I'm just going to ask if we could please just have 10 more minutes for the session so that the third speaker can start. I am conscious of the time as well, and my sincere apologies.
Okay. No, thank you. All right. All right, so getting just quickly speaking on counseling psych and how internships are. Don't let this be discouraging. Don't let this be what influences what you choose when it comes to application, in terms of, you're a counseling psych, and then you go apply for clinical because of the money that is there. I'm trying to sway away from that, and I'm speaking on counseling because it's high time that we speak for counseling psychology. There is a need for it. There is a need for our lanes. There is a need for who we are. And I feel that the more people speak on it, the more people can stand on it, the more better opportunities we will also get for the next generation that is coming into this field, because of there is a need for that. And that is not a field to shy away from, because of in internship, there is no fun. But once you get out of internship, our opportunities, like they're endless. You can get opportunities, different opportunities out there. But this factor within internship can actually influence people going a different direction, thinking because, oh, there's no financial, there's no that, financial gain, or, whatever that however that you may think of it. Don't let that discourage you. It's high time we stand for this lanes, and we are the ones who have gone, or the ones who are counseling sites. We can speak up on that, and we can bring the change, and we can show the value of it. But if we always running away from it, and we do not speak about it, we do not stand for it, then there will never be change to it. So we are the ones who have to come and step in and show the difference, show why we are important and how we are different from other streams. And we all need each other. As a matter of fact, there is a gap for all of us. And it's important to also speak so confidently about why counseling psych, why we want to be a counseling psychology, and what's the difference between counseling psychology and clinical psych, embracing that lens. And that is a very beautiful thing once you get into what it is and what it stands for. So I just wanted to also highlight on that realistic expectation that yes, it's what it is, but I'm hoping that as we get into the field, we can make that change, that we also, can be valued and can be seen, and we also have a role to play in the psych journey. But other than that, I know that this journey can be very tedious, and rejection can be painful, and that is the core of what this journey is, and we can't shy away from those things. But when we do accept them, we can work around them and see how we can make this journey better for ourselves and each other. So I think I'm gonna just quickly jump onto the last point, managing uncertainties and exploring other alternatives. Not an easy thing to talk about, because when you're so adamant, I mean, I'm speaking from experience. I was adamant. I was like, I am gonna be a psychologist, nobody's gonna tell me different. So that for me was something that I stood on. I stood on, I was like, I'm gonna be a psychologist no matter what. But then when the time was not there, then what do you do in that moment? If you do not get accepted this year, then what do you do? And that is something that we have to start thinking about, that yes, you may want to, with your heart, mind, and soul, want to become a psychologist. But if it doesn't happen for you this year, then what are you gonna do? And this is what I want to touch on when I come to this last slide, that it doesn't end there. How can we manage the uncertainties of this journey? Hi. Sorry, just quickly hold on. All right. So managing the uncertainties of this journey is acknowledging, I think I also touched a bit on this, acknowledging what you can do and cannot do. So understanding what you can control and what you can't control. So part of it is you can definitely control the preparation. I mean, we've spoken about strategies on how to prep yourself. We've spoken about motivational letters. We've spoken about autobiographies, and those are in your control and you can do that. But however, you cannot control the application, selection, admission decisions. And the best way that you can manage those uncertainties is acknowledging what you can do. If this is all that you can do, just focus on that. Focus. So what I'm trying to say is that focus on delivering the best rather than focus on the outcome that might come from the whole process. Because oftentimes we are so concerned and captured by, am I going to get in? But you can't control that. You cannot control whether you're going to get in or not. And sometimes that can limit you from actually showing your best in those applications, in those selections and interviews, because you're so focused on the outcome. You're so focused on what they see about you. You're so focused on what you cannot control that it provokes anxiety. You end up not delivering the best. But when you are mindful, so when you are mindful of what you can control, it helps you even in, maneuvering the anxiety when you step into application, interviews. You know what you can control and focus on that. So I just wanted to mention that, focus on that, because of the anxiety can be so crippling that it disadvantages you, even when you know these certain things that we spoke about, even though you have prepared, but because of you are not focusing on what is within your control, you end up falling into the things that you cannot control, and then they disadvantage you in this journey. So that's how you can manage these uncertainties. Focus on what you know, acknowledge what you can do and what you cannot do. So being mindful throughout this journey is very, very important. Take it into consideration. Don't overlook it. Don't stress yourself. Do the best that you can and give that. I know people that have went through the selection and those who have gotten in, we often say, just be yourself. It sounds so cliche. It sounds like we don't want to give you the information. But when I tell you just be yourself, go back to the strategies that we spoke about in the beginning, the self-development, personal development, self-awareness. Go back to those. That's what we mean when we say be yourself. If you have done the work, you will understand that when we say be yourself, we are saying put in that work and go present that to the panel. Go show that in your paper application. Go, demonstrate that in your interviews. So know what you can do and stick to that. Don't focus on, I don't know if they're going to take me or whatever. Don't focus on things like that. They are outside of your control. And another thing that I also wanted to talk about was preparing for different outcomes. So this is something that we all know, that there is a possibility that you might not be accepted this year, even irrespective of the preparation that you have done. So how do we manage these uncertainties? Do not let this a rejection, even if it's like your fifth or your fourth, if you know this is for you, it's for you. I've known people who've gotten on the sixth try, so you never really know. But the disadvantage, and maybe something that I should highlight, is that people, when you are rejected this year, you go back and relax. You just relax and wait for another application season. This way you are shooting yourself in the foot, because you do not go back and actually develop and invest in your career and invest in your journey. You do not go back and do that. So this is how you can start preparing for a different outcome, because of these are things that actually do happen. Don't just go back, do nothing about it. I'll wait for next year. Have nothing to do with psych or developing or finding out new information on what's happening, not investing in that journey. you can go back and prepare, prepare for it. These things do happen, but don't let it be a discouragement, but let it be an opportunity for you to go and learn more about yourself, develop more, and what more you can do while, once you went through that process and you did not make it. So don't just sit and wait. Don't just sit and do nothing about it. So put in the time, put in the investment. At the end of the day, it's your journey. And I'm telling you, what you put in that we don't see, that the panel don't see, those times, how you prepare, what you do, it will reflect in your interviews. It will reflect in how you handle your applications. It will reflect. And I'm speaking on this because of I have mentored students before, and you find that they still cut and paste from their previous, for example, autobiography. They never take the time, to sit down, do another one, reflect on yourself. Okay, I'm not the same as in 2024. I'm much different in 2025. How can I reflect on that? I'm telling you, when that kind of slack, when you don't put in the effort, when you don't put in the extra, the extra mile for your career, it shows. Remember that we are dealing with psychologists, people that have studied human behavior, people that understand human behavior. So certain things can show, like you may overlook it and be like, what, let me just apply. You copy and paste your last year's autobiography and motivational letter and you just go with it. But you know that did not help you last year. You still apply it. That ability to not push yourself and prep yourself well, even when, you are in these uncertainties, can actually shoot you in the foot for next year. So we talk about these things. Take the initiative, show that you do want this, put your best foot forward when it comes to this, and actually look into doing that. So it also goes on the next one. How you can manage uncertainties is seeking guidance and support. Also, disclaimer when it comes to seeking guidance and support is that don't take people's journeys as yours. My journey is different. Selina's journey is different. Nonhle's journey is different, but we all managed to get in. What I'm saying is that you can learn from us, but do not take our journeys as yours. For example, my first year, I started applying for masters in 2024, and I got in that year. I got rejected at other universities, and the last university that was on the list was the one that took me in. But that is my journey. How did it look like? How did I prepare for it? There were years where I was doing a whole lot of volunteering. I was preparing for that moment before I even started applying. I remember before I started applying for my master's, I took a gap year right after my honors. I was like, I am not ready. I was honest with myself that I am not ready to apply for masters. I feel like it's too much for me. I just came out of honors and I feel like it's too heavy. It's just going to be too much for me. I want a year where I can just sit down, compile, do research about, you see, that initiative, that extra mile, that extra mile I wait for just for me to apply. I'm not saying that this will guarantee you, but these are necessary measures that are very important and can actually reflect on your application and on your journey. I took a gap year, and during that year, I just worked on improving myself. I worked on my master's, my autobiography. I worked so hard on those things that I was like, no, I'm only going to apply the following year. And I know, and I feel confident, went to therapy, did the work, sat down, faced all those things that made me uncomfortable. I did that, So seek guidance and support, but with caution. Talk to relevant people, mentors, professors, past master's students. Those things can help you. How you managing these uncertainties? Go to therapy. Can even speak about it. I think in one of our groups where I share with Selina, we spoke about rejection, that I once read somewhere that, if you have experienced rejection in childhood, it can be a nerve-wracking journey for you to approach masters because of you fear that rejection, you know. So certain things like that you can work with in therapy and deal with them through our therapy, you know. And these are the things that we try to assist very many mentees about, that work through those things that you don't see, those blind spots. So I still come back to saying the best way to manage uncertainties is seek support, go to therapy. Once this has happened and it did not go the way that you anticipate, go for therapy. Go for therapy, find out, self-reflect, do the things that we spoke about. Sit down with that uncomfortable feeling of being rejected, you know. Sit with it and work through it, you know. So those are the other things that I really want to talk to about when it comes to that. Another one that is very bittersweet. I think I forgot one point that I didn't put in, but it maybe let me just quickly put it in before I go to exploring alternatives. Another one is that yes, it's very hard, it's very challenging, but take it as an opportunity to improve your application, to improve, go to volunteering, do everything that we have mentioned. Let this be an opportunity for you to do that, you know. So prepare for it. Don't look away from it or shy away from it. So jumping to the last one is explore alternatives. I know that this is a very, very hard one. You know, sometimes we take it with ease and sometimes we don't. I mean, when you've done your undergrad in psych, you did your honors, you did your volunteering, you know your grades are good and everything, it can be hard to seek a different alternative when all these years all you've been investing in is psychology, you becoming a psychologist. It can be hard to look at different things, exploring other alternatives or becoming, you know, going into a different route. It can be really, really, really hard to grasp that. But I think when I was reflecting on this last point was that at some point we're not gonna, I know there's a lot of us and not all of us are gonna become psychologists. And that is the truth of the matter, that not all of us are going to become psychologists. And there comes a time where you have to sit with yourself and think, how best can I still make an impact when it comes to mental health? How best can I still make an impact even in assisting other people in development? Because at the end of the day, as psychologists, we strive to do that. Yes, we are wearing a different title, yes, with different aspects to it here and there, but the core, you know, the bottom of it is that we want to assist people in developing, we want to assist people in healing, we want to assist people in overcoming, you know, their challenges, you know, being the best version of themselves. And, you know, we want to work with behavior. There are different ways you can still do that without having the title of a psychologist. And that can be difficult, you know. I think it is also a question where you sit down with yourself as to, yes, Nonhle.
Hi, Kat. My apologies again. I'm just going to ask if we could please wrap our thoughts on the slide so that we move on to the next speaker, please.
Yes, this is the last one, actually. This is the last point. So we are wrapping up. I'm closing it. So there are, explore other alternatives. Due to time, we can't go into the depths, but you can become, you know, these registered counselors. You can look at in how to, just to keep it brief, you can look into different ways where you can still make that impact. I'm encouraging people so that you don't give up on the dream and desire to help people to, you know, in that way, because of you did not get through into psychology. But there is an alternative where you can still have the same impact, but just maybe with a different title, you know. So these are things that can be very difficult to sit with. But I think from this webinar, it will be very impactful if you were to take that away and sit down with that, because I don't know how many times or how many years you have applied, But if it comes to that point, be able to sit down with that information. How then can I still use this skill, this passion, this love for people differently without having that title of being a psychologist? There are many other alternatives. And I think that with you guys joining different seminars and webinars and all that, we can go into depth with the what other things can be there. But other than that, like I said, this is your journey. This is your career. You do the investment. Go out there and find out, how can I still be impactful? How can I still work, share my passion and desire of mental health with people without necessarily having that title of a psychologist. So I know I took a very different turn of applications. I spoke about the unspoken today, and I hope that everyone managed to learn from this and they took away something that they're going to sit back and think about. And I hope that I managed to meet a lot of blind spots when it comes to application selection and this season of masters of counseling, of applying for your masters in counseling psychology. I hope I was able to answer questions that people do have, and even those questions that we never talk about, that we struggle with in private places, or, in our own spaces. I hope I managed to meet those, but the knowledge never ends here, and people are more than welcome to reach out. We are there, and all the best with this time, all the best. Make use of it, make use of this information, and I hope that it helps as you navigate this journey of your master's application. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Katlego. Thank you for insightful and thought-provoking session. Your session on self-awareness, setting realistic expectations and managing uncertainty has provided us with a strong sense of direction this morning, as well as empowerment. And I want to commend you as well for your empathy and as well as your dedication to mental health advocacy. And we are truly inspired by you.